Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 to Thrive Live. I'm Karolyn Gazella, and I'm joined by my awesome co-host and good friend, Dr. Lise Alschuler. Hello, Lise. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. It's been one of those days, to be honest, like everything I do, I have had trouble. Like I went to do the laundry and the little label of my vinegar slipped off the bottle, and then the vinegar and all the glass went crashing down to the floor.
Oh, no.
Now I was trying to get on the show. I was having tech issues. So it's been one of those days, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? It's all going to change right now.
It is going to change. How are you? Is your day good?
Yeah, I actually went golfing. So
Oh, you're doing great.
yeah, I'm doing great.
Okay, well, what are we going to talk about today?
You know what, Lise? This is an interesting one. And it's maybe something that a lot of people haven't even given a lot of thought to. So we're going to be talking about how being congruent, authentic, and genuine can benefit not only our mental, emotional, and spiritual health, but also our physical health. And like I said, this might not be a health strategy that people have thought of, but I feel it's super powerful, and I can't wait to dig in. But first, Lise, why don't you go ahead and thank our wonderful sponsors?
I will be happy to do that. So first we have Immuse, which is a unique patented postbiotic that gives your immune system a key advantage. Immuse is found in many immune-supporting dietary supplements, so look for it on the label or go to immusehealth.com for more information. We also thank Cognizant Citicoline to keep your brain firing on all cylinders to enhance your memory, focus, and attention. So look for Cognizant on the label of a dietary supplement for brain health or go to cognizant.com for more information. We also thank ProThrivers Wellness Brain and ProThrivers Wellness Supplements in general. ProThrivers Wellness Brain contains Cognizant and some other brain-supporting nutrients, and you can find ProThrivers Wellness Brain at pureformulas.com, and you'll also find ProThrivers Wellness Sleep, which combines higher dose melatonin and some other sleep-supporting natural ingredients. And finally, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, a best-selling probiotic for more than 3 decades, which contains 12 probiotic strains that are shelf-stable, so no refrigeration is required due to their unique 3-year fermentation process, and it is a very effective probiotic, and you can learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. Okay, Karolyn, where would you like to begin when it comes to talking about congruence?
Oh, you know what? Let's begin by describing it. So when you look up the word congruent, you'll find descriptors like harmony, agreement, consistency, things that fit together. But more specifically, it's when our actions match our words and are consistent with our values, beliefs, and personality. So when we are congruent, we are authentic and genuine. So at least when I'm evaluating and looking at my own congruence and authenticity, I ask myself, am I being transparent? Am I being true to myself? Am I being consistent? Am I making deliberate choices? And am I taking responsibility for those choices and actions? So that's what congruence is to me, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how that impacts our health. But Lise, before we dig into the science, which you and I love to do you have anything else to add to the description of today's show?
Well, for me, in addition to what you said, congruence, I often talk about being in the right life. So that might mean aligning ourselves with the right job, the right relationship, the right location where we live, all that kind of stuff. And I think that kind of aligns our inner drive with our outer expression. But in order to do that, we have to be self-aware. So we have to have some degree of self-reflection and the ability to look within enough to understand where the incongruence may lie. And, we can maybe come back to this, but being in congruence is not necessarily easy or straightforward, I guess is the thing I would like to add.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I also would like to say that, that there are, of course, as you mentioned, there's research associated with the benefits of being congruent and kind of having this sense of transparency and being true to oneself. So I'm wondering, Karolyn, if you have an example of a paper that you found that is of interest to you.
One? Are you kidding me? Actually, I was surprised at what I found. I mean, this is a somewhat vague concept, and it isn't easy to grasp. But I found a lot, so I'm going to focus on authenticity. So, in one study, and this was from 2019, they looked at 5 dimensions of authenticity. Authenticity in a relationship. Resisting external pressures, expressing your true self, contentment, and owning your actions. And then they also contrasted that to 4 dimensions of being inauthentic, and that is phoniness, suppressing your feelings and emotions, self-denigration. I thought that was an interesting dimension of inauthenticity, and conformity. So what they found is that the people who were most authentic and the least inauthentic had higher levels of self-esteem, higher levels of psychological well-being, more positive affect, and much higher levels of relationship quality. So I think that that's an indication of the psychological benefits. But another study that I thought was really interesting looked at authenticity in healthcare. And this is where I think that we really get to potential physical outcomes. So what this study looked at is what impact did being authentic have on patients? And they took it one step further. What impact did it have on the health of the worker, the health of the healthcare worker? What they found is that when the workers were the most authentic, patient outcomes were improved dramatically. And they also found that staff well-being in the healthcare setting was improved dramatically when the workers were more authentic as well. And I found this interesting because the researcher concluded that one of the benefits, the reason it was so beneficial to the staff, is that authentic relationships are powerful drivers of trust. Yes, so when we are authentic, we are trustworthy. And that makes a difference in, not only our coworkers, but also in the patients that we're helping. So I thought that was a very fascinating study. And I just have one more for you. This one was a little bit over my head, but I want to bring it up anyway. So in 2023, these researchers looked at how authenticity impacted the physical functioning of the brain. And what they found was that there are regions in the brain that support self-awareness. Authenticity influences these regions, which is related to what they're calling self-alienation and self-reported anxiety. They describe self-alienation as being aware of physiological states, emotions, and just cognition in general. So what they've found is that when you're authentic, these regions in the brain are supported, and they have a lot less self-reported anxiety and much lower self-alienation. So they kind of go hand in hand. When you're more authentic, you're actually physically enhancing brain function. And I thought that was just really fascinating.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, I know. And there's a lot of great studies. So I'm just wondering, Lise, did you find anything that you found interesting on this subject when it comes to the science?
Yeah, well, to sort of pick up where you left off, I think that brain function improvement is maybe a reason, or it sort of jives with a study that was published that looked at the possible similarity or overlap between concepts, or what they call the concept, or we're describing as the state of being authentic, and mindfulness. And they found that there was actually quite a bit of overlap, so that generally an authentic person is more mindful, and a mindful person is more authentic. Now that may seem kind of obvious, but if we think about mindfulness and what we know about mindfulness practices, which can include meditation. It's not just meditation, but mindful eating, a meditation practice, contemplative listening, mindful listening to music, like all sorts of ways one can be mindful, where it's really just when you pay attention to all the thoughts in your head without getting attached to them, for lack of that's a very simplistic definition, but let's just go with that for a moment. And that effort of focus is actually something that exercises the brain in new ways. So it increases neuroplasticity. And I think maybe congruence is actually doing a similar thing, since they overlap, and that there may be ways in which being authentic is almost similarly like a way of focusing your thoughts, so that you're aware of and almost like accepting of yourself fully, which is also kind of what happens when you're mindful. You're aware of your thoughts and you just accept the thoughts without getting attached to them. And so there's something happening on the brain side there that makes that more kind of makes sense. But regardless, one path, if you will, or avenue to being authentic is in fact to be more mindful, to be more aware. And I talked about this earlier, just having this sense of self-awareness and this willingness to look at who we are, how we're bringing ourselves forward into any given situation. Are we speaking with words that actually reflect our feeling? Are we responding in a way that's authentically real for us? Like, all these things require a certain amount of self-awareness. So I found that study very interesting.
And let me just say, I love how you said that mindfulness can be a path to increased authenticity. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen that in my own life for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of along those lines, there was another study about the role of honesty and integrity for one's health. And so they looked at whether this sort of the ability to be honest, which is another way to describe being authentic, especially when you combine it with integrity. So if you're just really honest, very, brutally honest almost about who you are, what you feel, how you are in a situation, and you have the integrity to hold on to that honesty and to abide by it, that the combination of those things actually can predict your physical and mental health. And that it is a factor in how you feel about your life. So mental health, so your sense of well-being is higher when you have that combined sense of honesty and integrity. And interestingly, you have greater health. In fact, in this study, they found that they surveyed almost 10,000 older adults, followed them for 4 years, and they found that those who had the highest levels of honesty and integrity, or what we're calling integrity, actually had a 18% lower risk of developing lung disease, and 11% lower risk of developing depression. They were more physically mobile. They had less interference with activities of daily living. And these are just, some of the things they measured, but that's kind of amazing, like really amazing, actually.
I agree, especially when you're talking about physical effects. So it enhances physical health as well, because I think about mental health and spiritual health and all these other things as it relates to congruence, but I don't think I always thought about physical health. So that's a great study.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting about that too is if you think about this is like a feed forward cycle, because if you are being authentic, then you are really just bringing a sense of, I mean, it's obvious, I think, to most of people listening. If you're being true to yourself, you're going to feel better about yourself. You're just going to feel better because you're bringing your whole self forward into the moment. And then with the now findings of your physical health improving, when you have greater physical health, it gives you more energy, physical energy, which allows you then to engage in your life more. So then you're going to feel mentally and emotionally better about your life. So you're kind of compounding the benefits over time.
Good point. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so I kind of want to ask you a question, Karolyn. I'd like to, just before we go on, well, first of all, do you have any other studies you want to bring forward? Because you usually do.
I know, but I'm holding back because I do want to get into the practical side of things. But yeah, there was a lot out there that I found interesting.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what I was going to do too, is just go to that. So you start. Tell me about some of the practical ways that you feel like people can enhance their authenticity, encourage and be more genuine and more congruent.
Okay, great. Thank you. So sometimes I like to look at the opposite of something because sometimes it can be hard. You say, "Oh, I want to be more authentic." It's like, "Oh, yeah, doesn't everybody?" But sometimes I think if I look at the opposite, that may point me in the right direction. So in this case, I feel like the opposite of being congruent and authentic is being defensive and insecure. Those could be opposite things. So that becomes my cue that something's off. So if I find myself feeling or being defensive and or insecure, it tells me that I'm not being authentic, which helps me pause and then look at what's going on more closely. Early on in the show, you brought up such a good point. Self-awareness is key. So what I like to do is identify a trigger that triggers this self-awareness, and then I get to make better choices. So my goal is to not be defensive and insecure, because those are the polar opposites of authenticity and congruence. My goal in those moments is to switch, pause, be aware, and make choices to be transparent, to communicate clearly with compassion, and then take responsibility for my actions. So I find sometimes it's easier for me to identify when I'm being defensive and insecure than it is when I'm being authentic almost. So these more what one might deem as negative characteristics or negative qualities or negative emotions actually become a trigger to transform them into something more positive like authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you, first of all, that's a really beautiful way to take something that can otherwise cause you to kind of berate yourself and spiral down, and instead sort of say, okay, whoa, what's happening here? So, and I love that you're using a trigger, like you're paying attention to something that will then guide you towards a more authentic way of being. And I do a similar thing. So for me, I look for physical triggers. So when I'm in alignment with myself, sometimes I can actually feel it in my body. And so sometimes I feel it, like if anybody knows about the chakra system, it's a sort of an system of energy centers throughout the body that go from kind of the base of the spine all the way up to the crown of the head. And I can sometimes feel myself getting more energy in my energetic centers when I'm in alignment with something. And the opposite can be true as well. If I'm doing something that doesn't feel physically right, I can sometimes get actually a little nauseous, or my head gets not like a headache, but it just kind of hurts a little bit, just feels funny. Occasionally I'll have like a sort of immediately like a stiff neck. So it's like the bodies can react right away to something that you're kind of on this level of things. So if I'm attuned enough to my body, I can actually feel when I'm in alignment with something and when I'm not. And if I pay attention to that alignment, I can then dissect whatever's going on, figure out what about the situation isn't right for me at that moment, and obviously try to change it.
Okay, I have a question for you. Because I love this. I'm a huge fan of the chakra system, and I sometimes meditate to it. And so, how does this relate? Can you pick up on other people's energy to help? You know how there's that old saying, "You read the room." So I'm trying to have my energy and intuition pick up on other people's and see if I can evaluate their authenticity and their congruence, because frankly, incongruence makes me nervous. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to tell you.
Yeah.
So if I can pick up on somebody else's authenticity and congruence,
Mm-hmm.
I take a deep breath. So do you apply that same concept of what you were just talking about to kind of read the room?
Yeah, such a good question. And I know you're really good at reading the room, and you're also working really hard to develop that ability within yourself, which is wonderful. And I think that I do feel like, I mean, I miss it sometimes for sure. So I'll be honest, but there are definitely times when there's something about another person that just makes my skin crawl a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this sense of inauthenticness coming from them. So, like, sometimes people are putting on a good face and they're being really jovial, but I can tell they're not feeling that way. So, you might not even see it, but you can feel the fakeness of their emotion in the situation. That's one time I can feel it usually. Or another time I do feel it in others. I don't know about you, but sometimes people will be saying something that I can tell they don't really know very much about, or they don't believe in themselves. So they're sort of talking inauthentically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like you can tell they're doing the whole fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, which relates to my whole concept about insecurity. That to me is insecure action, and that is the opposite of authenticity.
Yeah, and I think in those situations, like, it is possible to actually feel it in your body. You just feel different ways depending on the circumstances. But sometimes when I'm around that, I'll feel, like I said, my skin will kind of feel like I just get that skin crawly feeling, or I might literally just get some physical discomfort somewhere. I mean, I've really started to pay attention to the bodily response to these things, because these sometimes are almost subconscious. Like, we're not necessarily thinking our way through this, we're not necessarily analyzing the situation. Within seconds of interacting with somebody, the authenticity of the interaction or the inauthenticity of the interaction we feel. So I think the more we can become in tune with our bodily reactions, the more we can get to that sort of innate subconscious way in which we all influence each other.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's the big takeaway is to really trust your body, trust those sensations, trust your intuition, trust yourself, and really allow your body, your physical body, to become kind of an energetic gauge, not only for yourself, the discomfort within yourself, but also in trying to determine how others are acting, and if you want to interact with them. I think
Yeah.
that's important. um are there, like, when I think about ways to build this muscle, this authenticity muscle, and this congruence, um are there other ways, like it you know I've in the past, not recently, but in the past, I have done a lot of journaling. And I will write about uh, times when I'm not, feeling authentic, or I'm not tapping into my intuition, or just all of these concepts that we're describing today, journaling. I find that being around animals is an amazing way to develop congruence. So are there any other ways that we can develop this muscle?
Well, I love that you said being around animals. That's so interesting. And it's true, because when you're around animals, you are immediately brought into the present moment. And there is nothing but honesty in the present moment. And
Hmm.
that's really what I was going to say is, I think, going back to mindfulness and a mindfulness practice or an awareness practice. And so working hard to remove our disassociative behaviors, whether that's taking drugs or drinking too much alcohol, or mindlessly engaging in binge watching of some show. Or, I mean, these are all things we can do, of course, on occasion. I'm not saying these are never ever, but they are not compatible with being present fully in the moment, nor are they compatible with being able to really go to that deep place within to find our well of authenticity. So if we're struggling to understand, am I in the right job, or am I in the right career even, or am I in the right relationship, instead of going to try to figure that out by numbing ourselves to it, we really I think the only answer we can find within is to be present with ourselves and to be honest with ourselves, which means we have to just let ourselves see what's in there and feel what's in there and pay attention to how our body feels. Let our thoughts emerge, journal what free journal, free associate journal. All these things help us to access our true inner core, our true inner knowing. And then we can, I think, find our authenticity.
Yes. And if the question is, can being congruent and authentic help enhance your physical, mental, and spiritual health? I say, heck yeah. I mean, so finding ways to be more congruent and more authentic and more genuine, and more accountable, really. I think finding ways to infuse that into your life and your personality, um, your physical, mental, and spiritual health will benefit. Wouldn't you agree, Lise?
I would. And I just want to add one other thing, which is that there are many of us walking around this world very traumatized. All of us have inner trauma that we've carried around since we were children. All of us, every single one of us. And some of us have very significant traumas. And so there's a lot of self-protective layering that we've put into place that don't allow ourselves to access that true authenticness, because it's not safe to do so. It doesn't feel safe to do so. So I think even another step that we haven't really talked about, but I just want to bring forward, is that if it's really hard if people are like, I just don't know, I just can't get there, then that's maybe a time to find some therapy or a practice, a yoga practice or a mindfulness practice that will help you develop a sense of safety, or maybe companion animal that you mentioned, Karolyn,
Hmm.
something that will allow you to create a safe environment so that it feels safe to go within.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end. So this has been a great show. So once again, Lise, I'm going to thank our sponsors, Pro Thrivers Wellness Sleep Formula, Amuse Postbiotic to give your immune system that extra boost, Cognizant Citicoline to help enhance memory, focus, and attention, and Dr. O'Hara's award-winning shelf-stable probiotic. This has been a great show, Lise.
It has. And Karolyn, I really compliment you on being a beautifully authentic individual. I'm happy to have you in my life. And everyone listening, may you all experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone.
Have a great night.